Welcome back to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. And he's back. He's back. He's back again. His name is Amish Phil.
Guess who's back?
Back again. Amish Phil's back. Tell all of your friends.
When was it? About somewhere in the 400s, was it? I think last time I came. Can't remember.
Yeah, I think either at the tail end of 300 or the beginning of 400 you were on.
Right. So what number is this going to be?
Oh no, I'm breaking my own rule, but hold on. Let's check the Instagram. Let's check where Phil was. I know your picture because your picture is probably my favorite because you have freaking Han Solo and freaking Carbonite Bath frozen. And I'm just like, is this America or is this just the world that we live in today?
It's what America? What are you on about?
I don't know. I'm rambling again, aren't I?
Yeah. You're doing a live Instagram fact check.
This is when you start to notice I post like a lot of stuff because I have to keep scrolling.
Yeah, I sort of got in the habit of posting twice a day to Instagram because someone told me that's what you're meant to do, and then I sort of dropped off a bit.
You got to be careful though. It's like letting in. Oh, you were 490. That was when you were last on.
490.
490.
And what's this one going to be?
I haven't decided yet. Could be my Christmas episode. I'm just kidding. Can you imagine if I pre-recorded that far? I've been on episodes of shows where it's been pre-recorded for like a really long time where you forget the shit you say and then it goes up and you're like, oh, yeah, I don't feel that way anymore.
So you record them in advance then? And then just let them out one a day?
Yes, just in case, like there's always going to be one every day, but I don't know the exact number, what it could be. Just depending on what the conversation could be like. I mean, let's talk about Elon Musk, for instance. Man is the most richest man in the world.
Yeah, that happened this week.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because I'm pretty sure Bill Gates was the richest man in the world at one point, and then now everyone hates him. So
yeah, they're pretty much diametrically opposed when it comes to the current viral problems we have, aren't they?
Would you rather be the richest man in the world when it comes to money or the richest man in the world when it comes to your soul?
Oh, there's no you shouldn't even have to consider that question.
So you're picking the soul?
Yeah, definitely.
Really?
Money's just a means to an end, isn't it?
Yeah, but you could have a fucking McLaren.
Yeah, so what? Have you heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
I have. And I put a McLaren on the top of my freaking list of needs.
Oh, yeah. I think there's been loads of work on people, who are materially successful. I think once you get over a certain level, the gains sort of drop off, and you're not really, it's the old thing. Money doesn't make you happy. As long as you've got your immediate needs met, and you're not, it's not like you're starving or you're stressing over making rent or making your mortgage the next month. As long as you're sort of comfortable, I think that's the sort of point of diminishing returns then. And then, I wouldn't know what to do with it if I had 100 billion.
I think if you asked like an average person what they would do if you had like $100 billion, the person would be like, I would pay off all my, and they would just start listing off a bunch of stuff. But like for me, I feel like my answer has changed. Like the people that want to spend all the money to kind of improve their own life, it's like asking a kid, would you want $100 billion? The kid's like, yeah. I said, what would you buy? I'd buy Transformers. I'd buy like just a list of just random shit that they don't need. My answer would say from like maybe 10 years ago has completely changed what my answer would be now. I'd be like, I would probably want like a small house in like the middle of the woods where nobody like an El Chapo style house, like with like the old nice, like where it looks like, we ever been to a restaurant, like a Mexican restaurant and they bring you your food out and it looks like they're serving it on fucking ceiling tile or whatever. Like it's just a roof plate, like one of those, like, I don't know what it is. They make the whistles the pan whistles, where you blow into it and go, and when you blow into it, they bring the food out on something like that, like a shingle, That's what it is, a shingle. So I would make a nice cabin with those like cool like shingles on the roof, and like it would look really, really like gangster styley. But then I would probably start a bunch of nonprofits, but I don't know which one I would want to invest more into. Something that doesn't get a lot of attention, like rare shit. Like
Mm.
here's an idea. Would you rather be super famous, like Elon Musk famous, or would you rather be famous in a different way? Because I feel like a lot of people want to be famous, but I'm like, depends on what your idea of fame is. Because the guy who's named after, or the disease named after, like Lou Gehrig's disease, that's a fucking terrible way to be famous. Like, imagine you get like a colon cancer or something, and your name's like it's your last name. They name it after you. Yeah, I mean, the optimal side of me, or the optimistic side's like, I got a fucking disease named after me. You know, some dude's gonna be like, "What do you got?" I got Robintitis. It's like, what does that mean? It's an inflamed asshole. I'm like, ah, shit.
No, it's a bit of a recent development, that though. People wanting to be famous just for the sake of being famous. I think that started sort of in the maybe late 90s, primarily with things like Big Brother, when the first season of Big Brother came out, and this whole bubble of reality TV,
That's
which
when
is
you're
now.
that's when you're tracing it back as Big Brother.
Yeah, well, I think that was one of the first major reality TV shows that took people who weren't famous for anything else, and then they became celebrities overnight. And since then, it's sort of grown, isn't it? I mean, I don't watch TV, but I hear about all these weird housewives of whatever, Shitsville, all these weird shows that are coming out. And I think this is quite a new phenomenon.
I think it started happening maybe around the time, like, remember all those, you still can buy them today, but they're like really stupid tabloid magazines that are like, like they say something stupid about an actor or actress. And I think like that was everyone's feed for a while during like the 90s and the 2000s. Was like, I remember my grandma would always pick up these tabloid magazines like Jennifer Aniston gets major fight with X. And then you read, it's like skip to page 34, like you're jumping in a crossword or some shit. And you skip over to 34, and it's like they just had a little argument on the phone, and then they hugged, and there's pictures of them kissing. And you're like, the front page made it seem like they were going to kill each other. Like I was so prepped to see somebody dead. And it's like, nope, it's just going to show you a bunch of weird tabloid. I think people like that aspect of things, like people talking about them, but I don't know if they're happy if it's in a negative way. Like if you're like, there's whispering tones of Amish Phil, but the way they talk about you is like Hitler. I don't think you'd like that.
Well, he was a hell of an artist.
That's what everyone says. The optimal side of stuff. I love it.
No, yeah, but I mean, everyone's Hitler though, aren't they these days? You're on Twitter quite a bit, aren't you, Robbie?
I've been getting really into it because I think I love the fact that I can piss more people off on that than I can through Instagram. Like, I know it seems bad, but like, there's just so many people putting up things like, I can't believe this, or what do you call this? And I just comment, I was just like, this is what happens when everyone gets a participation trophy. Like, somebody put up a bunch of pictures of the Capitol thing. And I was just like, here's a funny joke. Dude, they tried to light me up, and I'm just sitting there laughing, like, all right, well, okay.
Yeah, Twitter is a fucking hell pit. I can't go on there.
You remember King of the Hill? Did you ever play that when you were a kid?
Is that same as King of the Mountain?
Yeah, basically you're fighting everybody while they're trying to take your spot.
Yep.
That's what life is now. Everyone is trying to go for like, or in your mind, you think they're going for everything that you want when really they are not at all. It's just like, hey, like I'm actually just trying to start Google. I'm trying to start a business like Google. I want that Bill Gates money, except I don't want a mandatory program vaccine into people.
Oh, hang on. What's going on there? I've got a picture of a cat, a ladybug.
A water
Are you
spout
seeing
and
that, or
some
is it just me?
fireworks. It says movie.
That's not what happened there. I weren't anywhere near it. Sorry.
It's the ghost in the machine.
Yeah. Sorry.
What's going on again?
Hey, what's going on here?
Well, after some technical difficulties with Amish
Yeah.
Phil's camera. Well, look, you're Amish, man. You don't know how to use technology. It's okay.
Exactly. You can let me off, can't you?
I mean, have you talked to anybody who is actually Amish?
No. I mean, we'd have to get an Amish person who is on, is it called Rumspringer?
What? I don't know. I've heard that before, but that is a terrible name for a daiquiri, but an awesome name for a show.
They, they do a thing when they reach adulthood, I guess. They are 18 or 16 and you live in the Amish community. They let you out into the real world, and they get to sort of live amongst us for a period and then decide, oh, I've done it again, and then decide whether they want to go back to the Amish community or stay where they are.
And you get to choose if you want to go back, which is the craziest thing. Cause like imagine you raise someone for like, let's say 16 years, 17 years, and you're like, hey, you're about to go out into a world where you're going to be so influenced. Like, who's to say you don't go out? You accidentally get slipped into like a dark room or something. And the next thing you know, you're shooting a porno and you become a major porn star. Next thing you know, you're like, I don't want to come back, dad. Like, I'm a fucking porn star. Would you go back? I wouldn't go back if I was making bank. I was like, this is way better than churning butter. I'm having a great time.
It's a bit like, what's it, OnlyFans, isn't it? Have you heard of OnlyFans over there?
I've heard of it. Thought about it a couple of times.
I was reading an article today, and it was a teacher, and she'd given up the teaching life, and she was making major bank on OnlyFans, and every credit to him, I think.
Can you blame her for doing that? Like a teacher's salary is not that much. You would think that like if you're going to, I mean, that's the weird way that we look at fame now, which is like porn star fame versus actor fame. They're two different levels of fame, but they have the same goal kind of. It's like just getting people to admire them and love them type deal. But like they're just two different routes. And I'm like, who's to say like the porn fame is that bad? I mean, I know it sounds like a lot of people are like, well, the industry is insane. Like you want to get like, okay, you're getting paid to have sex. If you enjoy that, then go after it. It's after your craft, whatever it is. I don't see that as a bad thing. It's like my favorite person in the fame starlight is James Brown.
The Godfather of Soul.
Yes.
Right.
That man is fucking nuts. He was arrested on December 14th for a high-speed pursuit car chase after he waved a gun at a bunch of people in a real estate office because one of those guys shit in his toilet. That is a man of talent. And his videos online, whatever it is, you can Google it and look it up. He looks like a fucking Thundercat. His hair's all crazy. He's wearing these giant yellow, like, you know, this, you ever see the commercials like as seen on TV stores where it was like, these sunglasses can help you see at night. And they're just yellow. He's wearing those, but they're huge, like something from like virtual reality headset size. And he goes, yeah. And they're like, how do you feel? And he's like, I feel great. And they're like, why do you feel great? And he goes, yeah. And he just like, you can tell he's on cocaine because you could just see him like grinding his teeth as he's talking. And you're just like, that's a fame. I mean, you're so famous that you can wave a shotgun at somebody for shitting in your toilet and people respect you for that.
You must have seen the video of him on PCP when he's been interviewed by the news anchor.
Isn't that the one where he's on cocaine?
Oh well, maybe it's both.
I mean, come on. If you're doing cocaine, you might as well just kind of, it's like when you reach in and grab like a handful of candy from like a candy basket on Halloween, just fucking take it all at that point. Like, you know, like if you're a parent or if you're someone handing out candy on your doorstep and a kid comes up, take one piece of candy and that kid goes in and grabs a handful and just looks at you while they're pulling it out. It's like, all right, dude, don't put it back now. I'm like coronavirus, dude. Like, just take the whole thing now.
Did you ever see him live?
What, James Brown?
Yeah.
No.
No, I saw him at a festival once.
Was he good?
He was good. Yeah.
Did you like the suit that he wore?
He was, I can't, how old will he have been? He must have been in his 70s. And he had a lot of energy.
Cocaine energy.
A lot of energy, yeah. I presume so, yeah.
It's like people are like, how is Mick Jagger still dancing on stage and doing all these crazy things at like 80? And I'm like, you think he's not on some type of steroid? Like, come on now. Like, I think we've just gotten used to the fact that like we're living in a world now where a lot of the time you're not seeing the actual person. You're seeing them influenced by probably a heavy amount of drugs. I honestly think they should start baseball, but like just let the people do steroids and create their own league for it. I mean, in bodybuilding, there's natural and unnatural. Why don't we just have that with sports? You know how fun it would be to see some dude eat a baseball bat and fucking hit 1,000-mile-an-hour pitch and then like goes up into like outer space where it brings down one of those Teslas? I would laugh my ass. That would be the best form of entertainment.
There's a real chance of this sort of thing happening with transhumanism, and that,
Excuse me? Transhumanism?
transhumanism
Okay, explain.
is the sort of theory that we're evolving. Take artificial legs, for example.
Okay.
Like, if you think forward maybe 10, 20, 30 years, there'll come a point where artificial legs that, say, a vet gets who's been hit by an IED will perform better than his original legs. And then what'll happen is someone will be the first person who decides, I'll tell you what, take off my legs and give me the artificial ones.
So this is my thought on, I'm not pro technology when it comes to putting it inside of your body, but there's been a weird shift of, I think, in society that I think we touched on last time you were on, where we've went from creating like artificial life that's going to be like able to do all of our biddings and chores to like I guess Terminator movie kind of scared everybody, like they didn't want the robots taking over, to now we're like, let's put it inside of our bodies and see how far we can body modification, like make ourselves the elite humans, like an elite species. Makes sense that we can easily create something that's better than the originals that we have, but I also think there is a line that needs to be drawn, because if you look at genetics, for instance, 10,000 years ago, we, compared to who we are now, like in the year today, our physical adaptations aren't that huge on a grand scale of everything that's evolved. Our physical adaptations when it comes to bodies, like just our evolution of that, it's not big at all. It's so small you could barely even record it. I think your gallbladder you don't need anymore, your appendix you don't need anymore. People always toss out, well, we're taller now. Back in the day, I'm like, that's not regular evolution though. That's because of the fact that you're fucking pumping in all these types of chemicals into your food. No wonder you're gonna grow a little bit bigger. It's like,
It's all down to diet.
yeah, it's like you start to notice. It's like the only thing that's really dramatically evolved about us is, I think, our influence when it comes to our mental. Our physical is still the same as it was 10,000 years ago. If I picked up some dude that was around in Alexander the Great times and I put him in a theater with regular clothing on, just like how I'm wearing or something, and had him sitting there watching a movie, you wouldn't be able to tell that guy was from 10,000 years ago or something. You would think that was just a normal person until he started talking. And you're like, why are you all about pillaging? Like, what, what? You're not from this time period, are you? No, 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 no. I'm from the age of Sparta. We used to kick people in holes if they didn't fucking fold their t-shirts right. It's like, all right. That's why none of you guys wear short shirts.
Yeah, you won't be able to tell apart someone from Alexander the Great's time.
So what's the obsession of trying to be a perfect species when our biggest flaws is the fact that we're basically destroying ourselves? We're trying to make our bodies improve by living longer, which I think is amazing. But the factor of, we still can't really, like, even if you did get, let's say humans get to live to be 150 years old, how many people are going to live to be 150 years old based on everything that goes on around us, getting hit by a car, getting shot, doing something like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're reaching the end of our progress when it comes to longevity. I think sort of 100 years is pretty much where we're at, and I can't see it going. I can't see a time where people are going to live to 150, 200 years old. I think we're a long, long, long way off that. We might never get there.
If I pulled out like a stopwatch and I gave it to you and it showed you, without doing anything, without smoking, without drinking, your life, how many years you've taken off by doing so, like eating fast food, whatever, and you noticed it, do you think it would be a large amount? Do you think it would be a small amount?
I think it would be 5 years.
5 years. Do you think that it would be enough to make you want to change your ways, like a big shock to you? Because I feel like
No.
imagine if I told you could live to be 150 and then you end up dying at like 75. God forbid, knock on wood. My table's made of wood, so we got this. Um, but do you think it would be so dramatic where you'd be like, I gotta change my ways right now? Like, because I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about Christian Bale's performance in The Machinist.
God, yeah.
Yeah, and they were like, you know, he took like probably a good amount of years off his life from doing that performance. Like
Yeah.
there's his body still hasn't really recovered. So it's like you see him now, but he talks about like, yeah, I still don't feel 100%. I'm like, yeah, what is I really want to know, like maybe all those accidents you had when you're a kid, like you ever had a near death experience where it was like, oh shit, like maybe I died at that moment.
I think life's for living, and I don't tend to worry about longevity at all. That's probably not a good thing. But I mean, where do you draw the line? It's like I said about having an accident. You can't just wrap yourself up in cotton wool and stay in the house every day. That's not living.
Sir, I have Netflix. I can narrow down a good chunk of time with the amount of stuff that's on Netflix.
No, not for me. No, you've got to. I suppose you've got to put things into perspective, haven't you? And is it worth sacrificing certain things for maybe a possible small increase in longevity? I don't know. I don't buy it.
I want to get to a point where, because I don't want to live forever. I don't want to live to be probably 100. I've seen my great grandfather live to be 97, and he fucking hated every moment of it. Um, but I want to live to a point where I feel like I'm okay. Like it's time to go. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, you want to feel like you've accomplished what you were here to
yeah.
do.
And I think that depends on whatever your view of being accomplished means. To me, I would like a statue built after me, or at least start a cult. I see so many cults nowadays. I'm like, I wish I had one.
Oh, again, a bit philosophical here.
Well,
What's
you
the
got
meaning
the
of
freaking
life,
Amish
Robbie?
Inquisition. I'm already jealous. I'm like, he's got a damn Inquisition. What do I have? I have what? Like my face with laser beams coming out of my eyes. Like that's nothing. It's a picture.
What's the meaning of life, Robbie?
That's a tough question. That's a showstopper. I mean, if somebody came down from Mars and was like, I'm gonna give you an answer to one question. What question would you ask them?
Um, oh, a Martian.
Martian.
A Martian came down. What would I ask him?
Yeah, like some entity being, maybe like a representation of what we think God would be. Like Dr. Manhattan comes down.
Do you know, there's a lot of people who think that we could have been tampered with by aliens at some point in the past.
I think what's really likely is maybe the fact that not only that we probably came from Mars, which my buddy gave me this thought was like a meteor hit Mars and some particles floated off, and then we evolved from those particles once it got sucked into Earth's atmosphere, which I'm like, I'm not going to say that's not right. I mean, I don't freaking know, but the one I like to kind of think about is like, you know how we selectively modify things when we breed them? Like we choose like, hey, let's breed out this. We're doing that with genetics. Like well, I'll ask that question in a minute. Hang on, let me get to the point here.
Going on to eugenics now.
Mostly the factor of, do you think like if I gave you the ability, like let's say you get to pick a personality trait, like you get to, let's say before you're born, like, or your kid's born, for instance, you get to pick their personality traits. But when you're picking out their personality traits, I don't want it to be like you have to pick all the good ones. Like my kid's going to be super funny. My kid's going to be a Brad Pitt looking guy. And it's like all these things. It's like, at what point do we start being like, all right, he's got to have some flaws to him. Like, let's make him like, all right, he's really good at painting. He's an artist, but he has diabetes. Like, you got to throw that in there. Like, that should be the thing the scientists ask you. Like, all right, you want your kid to be a world famous movie star talent, right? Okay. At the same time, he's got to be dyslexic. And you're like, what? Like, why dyslexic? Because you need the handicap. You can't just give him all the talents of God. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
What would be the point? If you were a perfect being and you were designed that way, what would be the fucking point in living? That's
I
all. One of the points of life is overcoming adversity.
I bet you that if there is a perfect being out there, they are probably miserable as shit because
Yeah, because
they're
what
just
have you got left to do?
like you're playing on a Rubik's cube, you finish it in a minute. It's like I'm good at everything. It's like can't even fail right, and he throws a basketball behind his head and it lands in like a 3-pointer from like 100 court shot. And you're like, how? And he goes, everything I do is right. I'm never wrong. And it's like that's got to be the worst way to be because then there's never an ounce of you trying to get better at anything because you're already good at it all.
Yeah, it would be boring. It would be boring if you were great at everything, and
The
you'd have
first
no
the first couple of
opportunity to
years would be
learn.
all right. Come on now.
Yeah, it would say we're off though. You know, I think overcoming adversity, shouldering responsibility are very important parts of what we're here for, why we're here, and learn along the way and try not to be a dick. I think that's mainly it.
I think because I know there's going to be, I've been talking about a lot with aliens because the COVID-19 bill they have from January 1st. Dude, I don't know if they're going to release actual stuff on it or just tell us, like, yeah, we've seen things we can't explain. Either way, started to think, like, how much of this, like, because it does go into the genetics thing. Like, whenever you play the game Sims, I think a lot of people can talk about Sims relates a lot to what we're experiencing today, where we're in like this simulation. One thing I don't like about Sims is if you walk away from your controller while the game is still playing, your Sims will start doing shit without you. And I don't like that because then they start to create their own personality traits based on how you've like initially created them to have. Next thing, like my dude was supposed to have a career in the music field. That was his long life goal, was a career in the music field. But instead he got a job in law enforcement because it was a safe job that brought in easy income. And I'm like, what? This is too realistic. Like, you really start to notice the grand scheme of shit, or like how many people just like have this dream of like doing like the best form of karaoke, being a karaoke star, but then they're working at like a fucking Staples or IKEA and they're just miserable because it was a safe job. I'm like, that game is the best representation of who we are as people. And who's to say the aliens didn't just walk away from a little while and now they're back and like, all right, we let this human race try their best by themselves. And now that I'm back from eating my taquitos, I was gone for 10,000 years. These guys are going insane.
Do you think there is going to be some major disclosures coming with regards to UAEs, UFOs?
Do I think they're going to be, I think there's going to be some big discoveries, but I don't think they're going to tell you everything. It's going to a lot of be going to probably be redacted. Like it's going to be like, yeah, we know aliens exist. It's like, all right, well, what's the evidence? It's like, here's the documents, but it's all blacked out. You're like, so you're telling us it's true, but you're not going to tell us what exactly we need to be cautious of. It's like, yeah, because you're going to freak the hell out already if I tell you they're true.
Yeah, that's been one of the big arguments for non-disclosure, hasn't it? In that the panic it would cause would be, society wouldn't be able to control itself, and you'd end up with, anarchy on the streets and people losing their shit and all the rest of it. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't think it's coming. I'm not an alien believer myself. Not yet, anyway.
I think that anything that has a level of intelligence or recognition that it is intelligent compared to other species, its initial thing is wanting to create something. Even animals, even though they have like a base level intelligence compared to what we know about them, their initial thing is reproducing. We just consider that being like a primal thing inside of us. But I'm like, hang on a second. Is that a primal thing inside of us, or is that just our intelligence level of trying to make sure that we do live forever? Because if you think of it, you technically never die if you have kids and you spread your seed or whatever it is, because eventually you're just going into that form. You're changing forms in a way. It's kind of like reincarnation, but you're passing on your information, your intelligence. I mean, how many of us are the children of like famous philosophers or just famous people throughout history because we've soaked up so much of their information where it's like they've kind of imprinted into us, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Would you like to have like a legacy, Robbie, that influences people after you're gone? Is that maybe part of your motivation for doing this?
No, I mean,
No.
a lot of it's kind of selfish.
Well, some people would say that is selfish, wanting to have a legacy to pass down.
I think having a kid's selfish.
Really?
Yeah, because you just want a copy of yourself. And they're like, I love him so much. I'm like, yeah, because it's fucking you, man. Like, you have probably a small percentage of the other person in there, but inherently, you could change that kid's personality and the kid's going to agree with you because he's going to want to do that shit anyway, instinctually.
You think your kids always agree with you?
If I had kids, he'd have to. He'd
I got
have
news
to.
for you. They don't. They don't agree with you.
More on the lines of like, imagine if you got into an argument with someone, that kid is immediately going to hate that person you're arguing with. No matter how, if you guys just got into a fight or something, there is that inherent need of protection. Much like if you have a sibling, for instance. Me and my brother would fight all the time. If we got into a fist fight, if somebody picked on me, my brother would immediately get protective because that is like a sign of him. It extends to him. I think people even do it now with countries. If you crap on another person's country, they go as far as to be like, "Hey, we're on the same country. They're attacking us," and then they would stand up for their country. It's an idea of like you have a need to protect, but then it doesn't really infringe onto your actions towards that person. Just anybody else that you feel like might, maybe it's just a way of trying to get into an altercation.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I mean, some people love shitting on their own country.
Yeah, but if someone else
And
does
their
it
own,
to your country, you get pissed.
yeah, some people do. I don't know. It's that sort of branched into patriotism. I mean, some people actually love disparaging their own country or their own town, their
Communists.
own hometown. You know, I don't know.
Do you think anybody in Korea wants to shit on their country?
North Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they probably keep quiet
Yeah, they probably go a little bit hush hush, you know what I'm saying?
if it's even a real country.
What do you mean? Is like it's imaginary?
Yeah, yeah. One of our guests a couple of weeks ago said, "Yeah, it's nonsense that North Korea doesn't even exist."
What's the craziest thing you've heard on your podcast, like when you talk to people?
Well, 2 weeks ago we had David Weiss, who's like the king of the flat earthers on. So we went through flat Earth, and it was David who doesn't believe in North Korea.
Did he message you through like a weird pen page on Instagram?
Was it Instagram?
I had a
No, he
bunch of like
emailed
flat
us.
earthers message me through Instagram asking if I wanted to talk to this guy who wrote a book. He's like the head of the flat earthers. And I'm like, I'm good. You want to have him contact me? They're like, don't you want to be professional? And I was like, I talk about poop in my show. I don't really give a shit about being professional. I'm sorry.
No, he has been doing the rounds. I've seen him on loads of podcasts since he came on ours a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, he emailed us. He's not an author though. He's got an app though. You
He's
can
got an
download
app.
his app, and it's got the model of the flat Earth with the sun and the moon going around and the seasons and everything.
That's not an app. That's a model.
Well, yeah, it's an app.
An app has to do something for you besides make you that makes you dumber. Like you're looking at it like, hang on a second.
I should have asked him where North Korea was on his map, on his app.
It doesn't exist. It's like, oh, okay. Is that before or after the cats knock you off the giant ice wall?
Yeah, we went through the ice wall. Dinosaurs aren't real.
Do you think all right, here's a good one. Do you think we evolved from apes?
Oh, yeah, I would say that's the prevailing mainstream view, isn't it? That we diverged from apes. What, a couple 100,000 years ago, maybe more.
That's what I thought, that was like a popularly known thing that everyone kind of believed. And a lot of people say that it's not true. Like a lot of people I've talked to are like, that's impossible. No, you think what? You think they actually literally said, you think we evolved from apes? I just read an article this morning that shows that there's like a percentage in our genome that is genetically different from apes, but even though we are kind of a lot different than they are, we still relate similar to them. Even though it's weird though, because when we do surgeries, for instance, when you get like a transplant of an organ, they use a pig because we closely relate genetically to pigs, but our evolutionary scale, we're based off apes.
Yeah, I think we're pretty close to bananas as well.
Bananas?
Yeah, I think we're pretty close to bananas.
Well, like, are you basing that
Genetically.
off the potassium content or something?
I think don't we share 99% of our DNA with chimps? And it's probably like 96 with bananas, I reckon.
If I could splice you up with an animal, what animal would you want to be spliced
Oh,
with?
for like superhuman powers.
Yeah, you get to whatever animal you choose. Let's say we're going to take out one of the
Like,
valves. Here we go. If you look at people that get surgery with like heart valves and stuff, they actually pick up traits. Like if you maybe got a pig trait, or you could smell truffles if you got a pig valve in your heart. Or if you're like a horse, for instance, if you got a horse valve, you could shit standing up. Like there's those sudden benefits. Which one would you want? Like pick an
I,
animal.
Robbie, I want you to splice me with an electric eel so I
For
can just zap, shoot lightning out like the Emperor, like Palpatine. Do it.
that's see, that's what we want it to be, but it wouldn't be like that. Next to it would be like your dick just goes limp like an eel, like you could never use it again. That's the side effect. Like
Oh, fuck. I need to think of another one then. What
I was like,
about. Go on.
I was gonna say, if people got superpowers, or we find like, how long do you think? Maybe what, a couple hundred years until we're able to actually modify our genes so much to be able to. I mean, we're curing diseases, so could we modify it enough to have mutant powers? Like, how far do you think that is out of the realm of possibility?
I think with CRISPR and stuff, we're probably not that far off. We might
Okay.
be we in 100 years.
Okay, so then when people start getting mutant powers off of genetically modifying themselves, do we have to put in like one of those limiters? You know, like when
Mhm.
like the Hellcat, for instance, the Dodger Hellcat, there's like two keys for that car. One's like a rental key and one's like the actual key, but it limits the engine from reaching out at its max potential. How do we do that with people? Like eventually you're like, all right, dude, you got fucking 6 arms.
Yeah.
We gotta limit you here. So we have to give you a flaw in your thing. It's like, what is it?
There'll be a clause in the contract that if you get the genetic mutation, you have to have a kill switch put in your head.
Yeah, or maybe like if you have 6 arms, like two of those 6 arms have like severe like palsies or whatever, where they keep kind of like closing up or you can't control them. Is that bad to say?
What would be the point of that?
Because it's like, yeah, you still got the other four, but then you got to deal with the other two that have a mind of their own. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, sign me up. Yeah, shoot me up with it.
it's because
I'll take 2 monkey arms if I can have 4.
come on, I mean, if you could think of a
Great to fill in the dishwasher.
think of a mutant power right now that you would want, what would you want?
I think, a mutant. So I'm thinking of like, do you know? I think Wolverine's probably my favorite mutant.
So the regenerative properties.
Regenerative properties, yeah. Smell, incredible sense of smell.
That's the power you want? You're that guy on the X-Force or pops up. What can you do? I can smell really good. It's like you can smell an apple pie from 4 miles away. I'm not understanding what the thing is here. That's good with animals. Like when a bear can smell their prey from 5 miles away, that's pretty fucking intelligent. But compared to a human having that as a superpower,
Yeah,
that's a terrible power.
it smells like thunder. Put your coat on. It smells like it's gonna rain.
You would change up the meteorology game. I could tell you that much.
Yeah, that would be my route to fame and fortune, wouldn't it?
I think anybody that has eyes could change up the meteorology game because it's not that hard to predict the weather, but they get it wrong 24/7 and they still have a job.
Oh, what annoys me about the weather is they spend the first half of it telling you what the weather was like yesterday and the day before. What kind of forecast is that?
Because it's the only one they can get right. They know what happened.
Yeah, they're terrible. Yeah, don't bother.
Yeah.
There was a famous story in our country. It was called Michael Fish, this weather forecaster, and this was around, I want to say 1986, 1988, somewhere around then. And there was warnings of an impending hurricane. And Michael Fish was the premier weather forecaster on the BBC, and he basically came on TV and said, "Don't worry about it. It'll miss us. It's going to be no problem at all." And then anyway, it hit, and there was like billions of pounds worth of damage, and that almost ended his career, but not.
There's a scientific study that was completely ruined and probably is a really good idea, but it got ruined because people didn't like the way it was running.
What's that?
They used to be able to decrease the size of hurricanes by flying over them and putting a chemical inside of it where it would actually reduce the size of a hurricane and minimize damage. But people started freaking out because you were spraying the air with a chemical where they started thought it was going to affect them. There's actually an operation that got exposed a long time ago called Operation Seabreeze. And off the coast of San Francisco, they sprayed chemicals into the air. And I think like 5 people went to the hospital saying they had headaches and shit. But they were like, I guess we'll have to chalk it up to that. I'm like, look, You just come like we need a defense system against like nobody has a defense system when a volcano goes off. I had a volcanologist on here. I'm like, what happens? Like, how do we reduce a volcano if it's about to explode? She goes, what I do, I check every single day, and I'm waiting for that one day that it's going to say this volcano has become active, and I have to warn everybody in this whole entire place that they need to leave. And she goes, the hardest thing for me is some of these people have lived here their whole entire life, and they're going to be like, I've lived here forever and nothing ever happens, and they might die. And I'm like, wow, you think as advanced as we are, we would have found a way to be able to control stuff like that.
Did you ask her about the super volcano at Yosemite?
I did, and I asked her about Hollow Earth too, and she said that was bullshit.
Because that's supposed to be a real Earth killer, isn't it? The super volcano at the national park. If that pops, it's game over.
Do you own? I'm assuming you own a refrigerator, right?
Yeah,
Does it make a hum noise?
occasionally.
And you've gotten used to the hum noise, right? So you don't really notice it anymore.
Yeah.
Did you know when the meteor hit that apparently took out these so-called not here dinosaurs, the ones that aren't real? When that meteor hit, the Earth rang for like 100 million years or something like that. It ran for like an extremely long time. And people go, yeah, did it just stop? Maybe it's still going on now, but we've learned to create other noise pollution to block it out. So maybe there's just a lull ringing that's still here.
Yeah. Yeah, and you would not know. I mean, you're born if you know if it's present when you come into this world, you will. We only notice differences. We only perceive differences in things, don't we?
Yeah,
And if
it's like
something exists when you're brought into this world, you wouldn't even notice it.
future generations aren't going to have to worry about pollution in the air because they'll be born into that atmosphere.
Yeah, I don't know. Um, I don't. I don't tend to worry about volcanoes, but you're making me second guess myself now. Do I need to be worried about a volcano?
Do you live near one?
I hope not. I don't
You
know.
you didn't check your map? Like, you ever see those, topographical maps where they show you, like, the earth layers and stuff, and they're really, really cool. They look like it has, like, maybe, like, sciatica where it's, like, really bumpy skin, but, those maps, like, you ever check if you have volcanoes, if you have anything that's, like, could be, like, maybe affecting your home if you like, 'cause if I buy a house, that's the first thing I'm looking, like, type it on Google. Alright, let's see, I'm getting a house over here. How far is the nearest volcano? About 100,000 miles. That ain't bad. Alright. Well,
No,
I'll
the
put a
major
pin in that.
problem is flooding. We tend to
Flooding?
be building a lot of houses on floodplains now, and this is a major problem. More and more houses are getting flooded every year because all the best spots have been built on already, and so we're building more and more houses on floodplains, and then people are getting flooded and they can't get insurance, and they get flooded again, and they lose everything.
Maybe you should just dig a moat.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it works like that.
Did you see that trend of people on Facebook that were they were buying land in Scotland, I think, like 1 square foot of land, and they were giving it to people for Christmas? Did you see that trend?
Well, I gave my missus a square foot of land 2 years ago for Christmas.
Why?
Because it was a square of land. Fucking hell, I'm blanking now. Oh my god. It gave her a title. It was called Highland Titles. So she's actually a lady now.
That's what I'm saying. That's the trend. I watched a fucking, and I can't believe I watched it the whole length, 45-minute video of people getting land. And they were like, you are now Lord this. I'm like, how pretentious, how much of an asshole do you have to be just to like, I mean, it's okay if someone gifts it to you, but if you buy it on your own just to get the title of Lord, even if I owned a civilization, would you want to be the leader? Like, I would love
Oh,
to treat everyone the same, but then at the same time, I also think there's going to be that one asshole in the group. It's like, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? I'm like, you know what? Fucking thumb across the throat, like do that signal to someone where they take them out with like an arrow.
yeah, my wife is a lady of Glencoe now, a lady of Glencoe. And there's a good reason why they do it, actually. It's to raise funds because they have these massive ancient country houses and they cost an absolute fortune to maintain because they're so old. And so they do this, they sell these 1 foot squares of land off as a fundraising exercise so they can keep the place maintained and open for tourists and stuff.
How do they maintain it? Like, do they have when they go in and fix it? Like say the wall is made of like old cobblestone where it's kind of like ruined and chipped off. Do they go in and then refix the wall? Then like "Oh, it looks too nice. So someone throws a hammer at it to chip it back to like how it was before. Now it looks older.
Yeah, yeah, it's restoration, isn't it? So like, I went to York. I went to York about 4 or 5 years ago, and there's a big famous cathedral called York Minster, which is there, and they have a gang of masons working on site, and like they're like this is like a dying art. No one does it anymore. This sort of really advanced masonry, and so they try and restore it to how it would have originally been, I guess. But
Is
it's
it?
it costs a fortune to do it.
Do you think that's something they should be doing is keeping old things like that restored, even though it costs a lot of money? Or do you think that it's kind of like sandcastles? Like I believe people are like sandcastles. You spend so much time building something up to be big and beautiful, knowing that in the end it's going to be washed away by the tide. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if it's done respectfully, then I think that the problem is that if you leave these things to go into disrepair, they will just disintegrate, and that's part of your heritage that's being destroyed. So you know, some things I agree with, some things not. Like, have you heard of Göbekli Tepe
Yeah.
in Turkey? They put like a huge structure over the top of it to protect it, and I think that's not on really. I think it should be open, and it should be able to be seen in its original context.
I think
Uh,
the whole wear and tear part of things, like who's taking care of like those what is it? What's the giant monolith people say were built by the aliens?
Monolith,
There's a bunch of statues or these giant boulders that it's really, really famous. People say it was built by the aliens.
not Easter Island,
N-
the
No,
island heads
no, there's another name for it.
in the Middle East.
There's like a bunch of just like giant boulders that are stacked around each other or upon each other, all in a circle.
No, like Stonehenge,
Yeah, Stonehenge. Who's maintaining that?
the National Trust.
Are they actually maintaining it?
I
Like,
think.
there's a dude that's like fixing the boulders and stuff, or
Oh well, I tell you what, it was in the news quite recently because they want to dig a bloody road underneath it, and
a
so people,
road?
yeah, they want to take a tunnel underneath it, and people are up in arms. They should be, saying, this is too far. You've got to leave it undisturbed and look after it. We shouldn't be fucking with it. Yeah, but I mean, I think that's been moved. I think Stonehenge was altered in the 50s. I think, but I think things should be left original as much as they can, but we still have to preserve these things for future generations. That's my
That
take on it.
that's the superpower I want, is to be able to go back in time to when these things were happening and see the real story behind it. Like, you know how like that's
Yeah.
the best fact checker. Fuck Google. Like you could just go back in time and see it for yourself and be like, all right, first of all, Stonehenge was built by just some artist guy. Like people were freaking out about those monoliths, those pyramids that were, or not the pyramids, the little things that were popping up all over the
Buildings, yeah, yeah,
yeah, the little those things. That was an artist that created those. Like he
yeah.
came out later and he was actually selling them. And I was like, dude, you literally had a bunch of people thinking aliens. Like, even though it was a prank, I just want to go back in time and be like, maybe the dude that was making Stonehenge, it was an idea of doing a prank. And next thing you know, he died. And then this long thing of like the aliens built it. I'm like, now we're lying to everybody again.
It's very sophisticated though. That's what's intriguing about Stonehenge. It's the way the whole point is it was made for making astronomical observations, and that's why people still go there on the summer solstice and the winter solstice, and you can see the sun setting between these two stones. Where in this sort of channel. So it was. I mean, most people tend to think that it was something to do with agriculture. That by building these huge megalithic structures, they were able to make observations and then be able to predict the seasons and get a better understanding of when do you harvest, when do you plant,
Maybe
and
it was just a giant clock. Like each one of those things that are stacked up in a circle, they might be the numbers on a clock. And depending on which way the sun was rising, the shadows would depict the time. So maybe it was an early predictor of time.
that's the theory that you were being able to chart the course of the year. and maybe other things like more long term.
Did they account for like leap
Ecological
year and
things.
shit? Like I don't think anybody knew leap year back then.
Well, I think the leap year only came in with the Julian calendar, was it? I forget now.
Like you imagine some dude just comes up and goes, "Nice models, man. What do they do?" It's like, well, they actually predict time. He goes, "Oh, cool. You know, tomorrow is going to be the day when we set the clocks back an hour." The dude just pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head. Like, fucking spend all day on this. Don't tell me that.
It is weird though that a year is 365 and a quarter days. It should be a round number.
It was weird to see like because Snapchat, if you have Snapchat, it does these memories things of like when you took a picture and you put it on your story. And I had like 5 years of memories, and I was looking back at the memories, and they were like Christmas time, but it was all like the day before Christmas. One was the day before we celebrated Christmas this year, then the day before Christmas this year, then the day before Christmas this year, and you start to notice that it was just always like we're like advancing a day, like everything's a day later than it was the year before, and it's like what's happening, like what happened to time? And why do we have a clock that literally shows the end of the world known as the doomsday clock?
Yeah, and that's going to be updated in a couple of weeks. They do it at the end of January every year.
Is it digital now?
It's called the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, isn't it? And every year at the end of January, they tell us how fucked we are. And last year, I think they said they dropped it to, was it 90 seconds before midnight or 120 seconds before midnight?
What are they calculating the basis of that though? Like, are they just like,
they take everything that's going on in the world and decide how fucked we are.
so that's a biased point though, because like I saw when Trump became president, they sped up the clock by 60 seconds or something like that. And I'm like, are you just fucking pro like the other side? Like, why is
Well,
that doomsday?
yeah, they are. Well, there will be political creatures as well. But it'll be interesting to see what they come up with this year with the pandemic and everything. I think it was the shortest time since maybe the mid 50s when Russia did like a successful nuclear bomb test. And we'll see what they say end of this month.
I started fearing nukes around the time there was like a video of they were interviewing a bunch of people during World War II. And what they did was they had a bunch of guys, and it was a survivor of one of these experiments. They sent out a bunch of like the United States did a bunch of their own like people on these like giant boats, and they would launch a nuke out in the distance, and they would have them like head down, head between their legs, and they would just feel the radiation, where the dude was talking about he felt like his bones were on fire. And I'm like, you did that to your own fucking people. But like knowing what that is like, where you would think like it's not like Indiana Jones, you can't just hide in a fucking refrigerator and fly when it thing explodes or something. You're literally going to like feel all of that, like the heat. That, like, I had an X-ray one time, and I remember I was having digestive issues, and they make you drink this liquid so they can see inside of you. And when he put the X-ray on there, he put it on my stomach, and I felt like I was able to fart, and I wasn't able to fart before. I'm like, did that do that? He goes, yeah, but you shouldn't have been able to feel that. I'm like, that's insane how that works. It's such a small amount of radiation that it was like literally cooking your insides. It's weird because then you realize like if you they only let you tan for a total of like I think 30 minutes or like 45 minutes a day, because it'll literally cook your insides. There's actually been people that would go from like my gym has a tanning booth. There's people that will go from like this gym, go across town to this gym, go across town to this gym and this gym and this gym, and just tan for like 3 hours in a day. It's like there's a reason why it has limits, because literally there are people that have died from just cooking their insides like a turkey baster. You just stick it in them and it says like 75 and sunny.
Yeah, I've never been to a tanning booth, but I seem to think that they say when you go in, you pay for like 3 minutes. It's like 3 minutes.
No,
That's it.
at my work, they go up, the stand up goes up to 10 and the lay down is 15. But when like I've never been in one before, because like I don't care about getting tan that much, because I've seen Final Destination and I don't need to be lit on fire.
What about the Orange Man? How long's he spending in the tanning booth, do you think?
I think he's spray tanning himself with that. Like there's like that's another thing is like, when you see like I'm a bodybuilding like fan, so I like to watch those competitions, but I see how like orange they get when they do the competitions because it's supposed to help with the detail. There was an account of a woman that used to put Coca-Cola on her skin, and she got skin cancer from it because it was making her so dark because the chemical in Coke was making her skin like basically black.
Oh my god.
People are fun, aren't they?
Oh, back to body modifications again, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, what body modification do you want? Like a
I don't want anything. I'm quite happy. Or natural.
would you be happy
I don't
with like
want an RFD chip putting in me or anything like that.
you don't want to what do they say? You don't want to get one of those giant modifications for your dick where it makes it like huge permanently. Like people die from that. Do you know that? Can you believe that there's a small percentage of the population that have died from getting a dick modification?
Really?
Do you know what they do when they modify it?
I don't, and I'm not sure I want to.
So here's the funny thing is they give you options on sizes. They give you an option on a small size, a medium size, or a large size. And I'm like, what fucking guy is getting a dick modification that's going for the small? It's like going to McDonald's and they go, do you want a small drink or a large? You're going for the large. You're not going for a small. So people, what they do is there's this metal rod and they jam it inside of your crotch, and then it's supposed to extend it out to the point where it's going to be like permanently that length. So you don't have to worry about getting hard. It's just permanently that size. But people have died from getting the large one in there. I'm like, wow, can you think like you're going to ask this person, you're sitting down in the doctor's office and a kid comes up to you and goes, I want to get my dick enhanced. And you're like, all right, why? Why do you want it? Because I'm tired of getting made fun of. It's like, okay, what size modification do you want? And then the kid goes, I want a large. And you go, there's a small risk that you can die during this. The kid goes, I don't give a shit. Like, wouldn't you want to question him more of like, why does he feel the need to do that? Like, whatever happened to like being average or just being a really good lover or just being sensual to the woman's needs or man's needs?
The thing is, it's sort of a cultural thing, isn't it? Penis size. I think. I think as long as it's not like really tiny, like a mushroom, I think I don't see the point. I don't see. And really big dicks are not, tend to be uncomfortable. I hear.
Yeah, did you see the
I heard from my
naked
wife.
did you see the did you see the picture of the naked guy that was getting sent around during the beginning of coronavirus where he was just sitting on a edge of a bed?
No.
You never got that picture? I'd have to send it to you, dude. There was this giant trend of people sending you like fake articles like coronavirus like hits in this school near your area, and you're like, what? And then you click it and it's just a naked giant black guy sitting on the edge of a bed, and you just see his face, and he's got this huge hog that's like the size of like a person, and you're like, oh my god, it's like it scarred you for life. But like his face literally got memed to the face of coronavirus. Like, but then, like, one of my favorite comedians, Tom Segura, they actually found that photo and made a shirt of it. And then somebody who took the photos for that guy, like, actually contacted them and they got in touch with him. Turns out that dude's he's a French guy, but he did it because he was dying and he wanted to leave money for his family to pay for his funeral. So like they actually talked to his family and they raised a bunch of money for it. Dude, it's so insane and heartbreaking. You're like, how did we get that from just a giant picture of this guy slumped over a bed with a fucking rhino dick? Like it's insane.
Oh, it's weird how things can go viral. It's bizarre, isn't it? What we'll latch onto.
I like the story behind that type of stuff. It makes me like, you always hear those tearjerker episodes, like dude's house caught on fire. It's like, how did his house catch on fire? Is he okay? And he's like, yeah, he went back into his house and saved one thing he loved precious. You're like, a photo album. Nope, he saved potato salad. Like he just ran in and was like, look, this is a bomb ass potato salad. Like, all right, all right.
What's the one thing you would save if you had to run into your burning house?
A person.
Yeah.
I'm that type of guy. I know it sounds like I'm not trying to be like a white knight or whatever those people do where they try and like make themselves look amazing in front of like online or something. No, if I legit saw a fire and there was someone stuck inside, I would legit probably risk my own life to save that person. Even when it came to a gun in a store. I think here's how I can rationalize that where people are like, that's not true. Because I have such a low regard for myself where I'm like, I already am ready to wrap this shit up. So I'm like, hey, if I could go out by taking a bullet to the head trying to save a kid, everyone says it's like a free pass to heaven. So fuck it.
Well, that's a very noble thing to do.
I'm a noble type of guy.
Yeah, obviously.
Call me Noble Robbie. That's a good title I'd like. That or magician. Can you imagine having the title of magician in your
Might
name?
I might make you a laird of Glencoe. I can sort that out for you.
Dude, this is a white hoodie and I spilt Coke on it.
Only costs like 30 quid. Oh, I might sort that out for you. Give you a title.
Oh my
Own a
God.
piece of the Highlands.
I would like to be the hash singing slasher.
What? I don't understand.
From
Hash.
SpongeBob?
Oh, fuck. I don't watch it.
The hash slinging slasher.
I can't watch it. I
Oh,
can't do cartoons.
what title would you want in your name? What do you mean you can't do cartoons?
Oh,
They're not real, so you can't fuck
well,
them, but what do you mean?
to be fair, yeah, I'm wrong because I watch Rick and Morty.
That's a great cartoon.
Yeah, that's the only cartoon I actively watch that I can think of.
That's what scares me is like when Rick died in one of those episodes and they cloned him. And I was like, would you want to live knowing that you're just a replica of the original person that you once were?
Yeah, no, that's disturbing, that isn't it? And yeah, I'm anti-cloning. Do you think that people have already been cloned? Because there is rumors that experiments are going on in different parts of the world.
Yeah, but that'll lead you down like a schizophrenic rabbit hole if you let it. Like there's people that think that like people that in their own family are all replaced by like clones or imposters. It's called imposter syndrome. Not the legit one everyone knows about where it's like I don't know who I am, but like the one where like people think that they're dead and everyone else around them just doesn't see them. So they're like a ghost. Like, we see you, Jerry. And he goes, these people don't even know I'm here. It's like, we see you, dude. It's like, I just wish I could communicate them somehow. It's like, dude, you're nuts, man. Like, go to bed, go to sleep. You're drunk.
Wow, that's a legit psychological problem, is it?
Yeah. Like, all right,
Yeah.
here we go. You want electrical eel powers. You have
Mm.
to pick a mental illness. Pick a mental illness.
Oh, how do you define? All right, narcissism.
You want to be a narcissist? That's as bad as being a hypocrite.
We're all hypocrites.
That's true.
We're all hypocrites, one way or another.
Um,
Yeah. Is that an illness? Narcissism? Probably depends how far you take it, really, doesn't it?
Wish you would pick a more extravagant one. I feel like half the world is narcissistic.
I think all these things are probably on a spectrum, you know. I think probably everyone's got a little bit of narcissism in them, and it's just a spectrum. Some people are just a little bit narcissistic, and some people are heavily.
Have you seen? There's an episode of Joe Rogan I have to send you where they had a neurogenerative scientist on, and he was talking about how they saw that the link. And I've talked about this recently, but they see that the link between depression is in your diet because actually they're showing that there's signs that when your inflammatory system when it's inflamed that you are actually more depressed, and they actually think because they studied it from I think it was people that are suffering from PTSD that come back from war. Like they're trying to figure out ways to help these people get testosterone because a lot of these people that they're dealing with, their clients, had their dick blown off and their balls blown off from an IED under their vehicle. So ways that can help them, because if you're a guy and you lose that part of yourself, you're pretty fucked up, like depressed because you just don't have any sexual drive anymore. All that stuff's gone. So they're finding ways to be able to try and get that depression factor out of them. And a lot of them, like the same thing with football players, where they're discovering like there's major brain trauma where they're starting to forget, like get dementia and stuff where they forget things. They're finding that there's ways to reverse those effects by it's a link to your diet
Mm. I could
based
definitely do that.
based on like they think like a lot of these breads and carbs and stuff. Like if I gave you the example of maybe eating 4 cheeseburgers and a milkshake, sounds amazing, right? But after you eat it, you don't feel good. You're depressed as shit.
Yeah,
So
and
they,
that's short term, and
yeah.
there's
Well,
long term effects as well.
it makes you feel like crap where you want to go to bed and just sleep, and then when you wake up you still feel bad, and that's because that's your or your inflammatory response inflaming. So they
Mm.
think that if you go on like a strictly like primal diet, people, they're really not like depressed because they're not eating those heavy ass carbs and stuff. So it's actually that protein and stuff is actually helping with their depression, where they're seeing us like an actual change in a scientific study of people that are like depression is being linked to your diet now.
I can definitely believe that. In fact, I said on our show last week that I'm going to be instituting the Spartan lifestyle once I've finished all the Christmas junk food off.
What do you mean,
And
Spartan
it's a
lifestyle?
three-pronged, a trident, if you like, of health. And the three prongs are diet, body weight exercises, and grooming before battle.
You say grooming before battle. I just have a picture of Spartacus like putting those beads in his beard before battle.
Well, that's what they used to do. That's what they used to do. They used to comb the hair and brush the hair and oil themselves up, get ready for battle.
That to me seems like the dude that's like, I'm gonna brush my teeth before I eat. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, what are you
Well, the
trying to
point
think you're
is that
better than me?
they didn't know whether they were going to come out alive or not. So they wanted to make sure they were, that at least, the hair was tidy.
Okay, you've talked to a lot of people that deal with like occult stuff and deal with like cool, like out of all the guests you've had on your show, what's one thing you found super fascinating? Not one that not about like the flat earth one, but one you were like, oh, this really stuck in my head.
Fucking loads. I mean, one of my favorites from this year was a chap called David Matheson. And he's got a website called starmythworld.com, I think is the address. And basically, and he's written about a dozen books, and he's analyzing star myths from all over the world, whether it be, analyzing myths and cultural stories from all over the world, whether it be Greek mythology or Native American oral traditions, Australia, everywhere. And then finding common themes between these myths and how they relate to the constellations. And it's not just myths, it's like Old Testament, religious texts, all sorts of ancient stories seem to have common threads and themes that relate to astronomy. And
Yeah, I mean, my idea of astrology changed after talking to an astrophysicist. And then I listened to a bunch of stuff with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And they're like, how do people get up these like astrological signs and stuff? And he's just like, imagine you're taking hallucinogenic drugs like they did back in the day. You look up in the stars, you're going to see a fucking fish coming out of a pot. Like it's just going to happen. Like, the stars are going to align that way. They don't actually look like that when you look up at them. You have to make these large, giant like pools to be able to create that image. So,
yeah, people look at the image and they see a shape, and
man,
that then is incorporated into a story, which they would sing in, around the campfires. But wherever you go in the world, you'll find the same shapes being used with these same, what would you call them? Like, not, where something's thematic. I can't think of the word.
symbols.
Yeah, a bit like symbology, archetypes. So these characters have certain archetypes, and the archetype will be the same in each cultural tradition wherever you go around the world.
Do you
Like
believe it?
Hercules, for example, that different cultures all over the world recognize this symbol, this constellation of Hercules, and embody him with this archetype, this hunter archetype. And what it suggests is that there is a common ancestor to all these mythologies and stories and religious texts, which we have lost.
Kind of like everybody's got the same puzzle piece to the big picture. Like we all got these puzzle pieces thinking that this is the end picture when really we all got bits and pieces to one giant puzzle. They all kind of come together. If you study any religious text, they all hint on like the same basis of an afterlife. They all hit on the same basis of a deity. They all hit on these different types of things. But can you imagine? Let's take you back like 1,000 years. No, like 500 years, 600 years ago. You're on a fucking boat and the only way for you to be able to get home is by trying to study the stars and use it as a map to go home.
Yeah, it's something that was developed over centuries, if not thousands of years, and that knowledge was passed down. It's something that's developed.
That's so fascinating to
You
me.
won't be able to, you can't do it on your own. It's like, have you heard of, did we talk about Procession of the Equinoxes last time?
No.
So, if you stand in the same position on the planet and look due east on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun rises with a certain constellation behind it. And but this the motion, there's a motion. It's constantly rotating, but it only rotates 1 degree, which is about the width of the moon as you see it in the sky, every 72 years. And people thousands of years ago had figured out that this motion was happening. But you would have to observe it and then take another observation 72 years later to witness 1 degree of change in the background of the constellations on the summer solstice at a given point on the Earth. I don't know. A lot of people aren't familiar about this motion, this celestial motion. Everyone knows about the day, the revolve. We revolve once every 24 hours. And then we orbit every 365 and a quarter days. But also we wobble. And the precession of the equinox cycle is, I think it's 25,620 years for one revolution.
I'm already getting fucking motion sickness, dude. Jesus.
Yeah. And people had figured this out thousands of years ago, I would say. There's a bit of debate but there's a great book called Prehistory Decoded by Martin Sweatman, and he goes into all this, and he uses things like Göbekli Tepe, the carvings on the pillars at Göbekli Tepe, so as evidence for knowledge of this processional cycle, which takes over 25,000 years to go all the way around.
If I gave you the option to have all the knowledge of everything in your head, but you weren't able to ever leave the library that you learned all of it in, would you do it? You could just spend years upon your whole entire life studying and studying and studying and being smarter and smarter and smarter, but you can never go out to truly release that information to the world. And you can't create a fucking blog either so people can read it online.
I would really struggle with that because I love reading and try to learn stuff all the time. I definitely have a hunger for learning and not enough time to read. So I would struggle with that. You would have to. The con is that what would be the point? And it's getting back to what we were talking about earlier about what's the point in being here. And even though I like trying to learn or acquire knowledge just for the sake of it, there has to be a greater purpose in doing so. Having knowledge just for the sake of it in itself, I don't think is probably worthwhile. You have to be able to put it into practice.
How many people spent their life translating and transcribing things into documents in the great Alexandria Library for it just to be burned down and lost? Like they couldn't leave. They had to sit there and transcribe every single page. Every waking moment of your life was reading text and transcribing it into words for future generations to be able to see. And then that fire happens and burns it all down.
Yeah. What would be the point in acquiring knowledge if you aren't able to pass it down? There would be no point.
It'd be selfish intent.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So that would be my answer. I would have to turn that down.
Would you go as far as if you had information and you had to write it down for future generations to see? Isn't it still selfish because a lot of the time they manipulate it in a way that fits their narrative?
Yeah, but we're products of our culture and the times we live in. I don't think. I mean, if you're saying to deliberately manipulate it, I think we manipulate things by accident just because we're a creature of the times that we live in. You know, it's like if you go back and read some ancient Roman history. If you go back and read Josephus, for example, you can't just read it and believe it. You have to understand who he was, the context and the time that he was writing in. You know, I think that's natural. I think that we're always going to put our own spin on it because of our circumstances.
That's why people freak out about how like the United States history books are all like really bravado and crazy, like aggressive war stuff. And I'm like, you understand for the time period that was a sign of strength, was showing how fucking penetrable you were, the fact that you could destroy all these things in the worst way possible, knowing that, hey, don't fuck with us or this will happen. And then people are like, we're such a savage nation. I'm like, that's just our time period has changed. Now we're all about like boba tea and shit. Like back in the day, there was none of that.
Yeah, that's something that's come up in the last 12 months in our country as well. We had, during the BLM movement, we had demonstrations and protests and statues being torn down and stuff because, some wealthy industrialist from the 19th century was linked to a company that was involved in slavery or whatever. We tend to judge people by today's standards, which is kind of, I don't know if unfair is the right term, but you've got to understand that the context that these and the times that these people were living in.
Are you pro? You're in the UK, so are you pro um the separation from Brexit?
I voted Brexit, yeah.
Okay, I'm just checking because I know some people say like, oh, they think it's a terrible thing, and a lot of people think it's a good thing. I'm like, you're becoming your own thing instead of just working off another thing. You know what I mean?
I'm not. I'm against large supranational bureaucracies.
Something that holds such extreme power that they seem like even if you threw a rock at them or threw something at them, they wouldn't even feel it.
There was loads of arguments. The only argument for was economic, in that it was going to cost money and trade barriers would be put up, and it was going to cost money in the short term. But it comes down to sort of, I'm sort of a localist, really. I want decisions to be made locally, not in Brussels, about how our tax money is spent. It sounds stupid to me.
That happened during the lockdown down here. There's a bunch of states that weren't locking down based on like the governor was like, no, we're not fucking locking down. That'd be terrible for our state. I was like, that's the way you should run it. Sadly, I know people want lockdown and some people don't, but you got to look at like a lot of people are like, why are you going to give me advice on what I should do here when you don't live here? You live in like 50 states away. You can't just, you have to. I think the problems need to be focused on locally because you live there. You know why it's there. That's why people like it's the dumbest thing. You have to be born in America to be president. But that's just because they want you to have this sense of connection with where you're from. You know what I mean? They want you to be like, you're going to be more passionate about it if it's a place you were born in, it's a place you were raised or something like that. It makes sense, but there's just a lot of stuff where it's like, well, don't we have rules and regulations for this and we're not following it? It doesn't make any sense. We're kind of just like cutting the lines because it's cheaper or it's whatever way we want it to be.
Yeah, and it's a collection of states at the end of the day. It's not a democracy in the same sense that the United Kingdom is. So there's different dynamics at play. It is interesting to see how, different states like Florida are going one way and California are going the exact opposite. But I mean, I'm sort of against lockdowns in principle, really.
I am too, but I'm only for that because I think you should have a chance to make your own decisions on what you
Yeah,
want to do.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think the state has any business telling you under what circumstances you can leave your own house and who you can associate with. Just as a part of, even if it was the bubonic plague, I think that it should be voluntary.
Yeah, I mean,
But, we love lockdowns in this country. Absolutely love them.
does that just mean more time at home?
Oh, yeah. People are getting paid to stay at home. So they will love it, won't they?
That's like when we got $600 for the stimulus check and now they're passing that we're going to get 2 grand now. And people are like, oh, that's better. It's like, how many people bitched about the $600 but still spent that money already? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I can't believe they gave us $600. Like, shut up. Like, I just saw that you got a new hairdo, you got new clothes on and new sneakers and stuff. Like, you got new Jordans walking around complaining about $600. I already know what $600 went to. It's like, now we're getting 2 grand. Okay.
Yeah. Where,
That,
where
that,
did where did you think this money's coming from?
that helps. But at the same time, you got to realize like, yeah, we might have I think the big issue was that they were giving so much relief to other countries and not ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In that first stimulus bill, there was all sorts of foreign aid, and there was loads going to Ukraine and Israel and other places, weren't there? Which didn't seem to make any sense. And people were saying, if you just actually put it into the pockets of Americans, you could have given them 2.5 grand each or something, couldn't they?
I just wish that we would focus on the alien things. I know it's hard right now,
Yeah.
but this is what's going to unite us when we find out there's like a a blue alien with like Dr. Manhattan capabilities, like ripped
Incredibly
obliques,
expensive mouth.
amazing six pack, and these giant areolas, or he's just like, I'm gonna grant you any wish you want.
6 arms, but 2 of them are a bit manky.
This one won't stop
Incredible smell.
slapping me in the back of the head. It's like, look, man, you wanted 6 arms. Sorry, 2 of those don't work so well.
Yes, that will unite us, Robbie. When the little green men come.
I think we're pretty united. We've talked about like dick enhancements and stuff. I think this is like one of those connections you get where it's like you're bonded for life, like a blood oath.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, Phil, I appreciate you for giving me your time today, man. Is there anything you want to promote again? The podcast, the Instagram, the Twitter? Let people know how they can join the Inquisition, and when the hell am I going to be a guest on the Inquisition?
Yeah, we need to sort that out, don't we? No, thanks for having me, Robbie.
Do I get a card when I join, like one of those little licenses that says part of the Amish Inquisition?
Maybe we should start that. Maybe
Do you have gift bags? You got to have gift bags.
We thought. Oh.
I've been trying to think of like finger sandwiches to give to my guests. I don't think Zoom has the capabilities to transmit that. I could send you an emoji. I don't know if that means the same.
Is that a euphemism, a finger sandwich?
It could be a double entendre. I'm not going to lie.
Tell you what, I'll make you a laird of Glencore when you come on. Yeah, just go to the AmishInquisition.com. Or we're on Insta. If you can, we have one of those link tree things on Insta, and all the links are there for various social media. We only really do we're on Twitter and stuff, but I can't fucking be doing it. I only do Insta really.
What's Insta?
Like Instagram.
Oh, not Insta mashed potatoes.
Not Insta mashed potatoes, no. Or
you probably get more views if you had Insta mashed potatoes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it pretty much.
Facebook?
Yeah, we have Facebook, but I don't Instagram post to Facebook anyway. I only do Instagram. It's all I can handle.
Yeah, no. I follow you on Facebook. I follow you on Twitter. I don't know if I follow you on Instagram, but I always see all the Facebook posts, and I'm like, this is just the same thing. It says shared to Instagram. I was like, speak to me like your Facebook followers. You got to treat them differently. You got to be like, this is cult number 1.5. Like this is the other part of the cult where instead of the original one, this one, instead of drinking red Kool-Aid, we drink purple Kool-Aid.
If I didn't have to be on social media because of the podcast, I'd happily give it all up tomorrow.
Do what I do, post and ghost.
Yeah. How does the ghost part work?
There's an app where you submit what you want to be posted. It'll post for you, and then it won't let you go onto those social media things. So it's just an app to post for you.
Right.
I started doing that when I started realizing how bad I was caring about followers. Like it was becoming a thing where I was like checking my Instagram 24/7, because especially during lockdown, you have nothing to do. And once I started like going, oh my God, this is like a bad route. This is like a bad thing to go into. So now I spend all my time on Dragon City, which is fucking nuts. Because let me tell you something. For the past 5 years, I've been playing this game, and I actually need to check it because there's an event going on right now. But now I'm seeing advertisements for this freaking game all over the place where like famous YouTubers are saying, Dragon City, I just discovered this game. I'm like, I've been playing it for 5 years. I knew it was cool before it was cool.
My 2 kids play that.
It's an awesome game, man.
The thing is, though, is once you start, what would happen if I got your device off you and deleted your Dragon City Empire? How would you feel?
I'd probably get over it, but I would be upset for a couple of days. I've spent a lot of money on this game. Like a ridiculous amount, and probably so much where I'm ashamed to even admit how much I've spent on this game.
I remember my missus playing Farmville for a spell once years ago, and then something went wrong and it got deleted. And it was as if the dog had died. You know, it's like, you invest so much time into something. Oh, it's just a waste of time. It's a time suck. Get off that shit, Robbie.
It's okay. I don't expect to do anything with my life. I'm all right with spending it on Dragon City. At least when I die, I think everything, like, you could be
your legacy to the world, your amazing Dragon City.
So my thought is your legacy is only based on the person that reads the ending your funeral speech. Like when you die, when you're in the coffin, the person that just goes, and let me tell you about his stamp collection. You can be an asshole your whole life, but at that ending speech, if you pay like a really like really smooth talker to give that ending speech, everybody will forget all the bad shit you did and just be like, yeah, you know what? He did have a pretty good stamp collection. I did have a large Dragon City account, and it is pretty like I'm a high rank up in the.
That might be a good exit strategy. That being a professional eulogy writer, a really flattering one.
I also have that, and then like you hear about people sending flowers to their loved ones like a year after they're dead. I have it set up so I'm sending random like psycho killer letters to people's houses long after I'm dead, just to get a bunch of people thinking they're gonna get murdered.
Oh,
That would be sadistic. I would hate that, but I would be like, I wish he would ever write back to me. I'm just getting all these encrypted messages.
oh dear.
Thank
Well
you
then,
for coming back on, Phil.
no worries. Nice to talk to you again, Robbie.
No problem, man. I'll make sure to link everything in the description. And thank you for
Yeah.
listening to this episode of Out of the Blank podcast.